Hello and welcome back to the channel. Having a button to close the door just never ever gets old. I'm here today to talk about what it has cost me to run this Rolls Royce for the first year that I owned it. And it's cost a fair amount, to be fair. I did buy the cheapest Rolls Royce in the UK at the time by a long way. And I'll put a link up here to the video of how much it cost me to buy, and please do take a look. But today is all about what it's cost to run. What does it cost when you pay a small amount of money comparatively to a new one on a Rolls Royce Phantom? And should you consider it? You know, they are the price of a 3 Series BMW, but a 3 Series BMW you can afford to service at 300 quid a time. Can you afford to run and own a Rolls Royce? And today we're going to explore that. And I'm part of the Reddit community for Rolls Royces, and I try and contribute there. And people do post early Phantoms. Only this week, a 2004 Phantom. Should I look at buying it? It seems to be good value. But actually, can you afford to run it? That's a really difficult question that only you know the answer to. And that all depends on the type of Rolls Royce you buy. I think you've got to look at the condition of it. I think you've got to look at how many owners it's had and where and when has it been serviced. If it's been looked after really well, there's a good chance actually, even at 20, 21 years old, it's going to be fairly reliable, and you'll be unlucky to have a huge bill. But you must keep on top of the maintenance. Little and often is much better than leave it for 3 years and have a massive bill at the end of it. But can you afford the little and often? Because it's not going to be £100 here, £100 there. It could quite easily be a couple of thousand quid here and a couple of thousand quid there. But that is part of Rolls Royce ownership. You've got to be able to foot the bill when it comes in. So today we actually have a sponsor called Vectoring, and they make this, a vector book. And luckily I have a picnic table to put it on. Vectoring can be found at vectoring.com, and what they do is something very clever but also incredibly simple. You take your Samsung mobile phone and you plug it in to this little beauty, and now on the go I don't have to finish an email on my phone like this, or that Word document you wanted to edit. You can open up your vector book and type away, because it hasn't got any computing power. It is a screen, a keyboard and a battery. That's it, which means I can share it with you. And there's no data transfer. All the connectivity, everything is on your phone. As soon as you unplug your phone, there's nothing on here, totally done. So, plug your phone back in, do what you want. Need to make a presentation? It's a yoga book. Why carry all these things around with all these processes in them when you can have the simplicity of something that is shareable? You now need to use it, that's absolutely fine. They also make a vector dock, which is sat on my desk at home, and all I do is get in, plug in my mobile phone to the dock, and I'm away in the same place I was before. No need for all these other peripherals. Just one on the go and one at home. Visit vectoring.com to find out more. And thank you to them for sponsoring this. When I bought this car, in my previous video, I explained that the front tyres weren't the correct size. So the first thing I had to do was replace those. My first port of call was a local Rolls Royce specialist, and they are well known in the Rolls Royce community in the UK for restoring some really fine examples, and they sell vintage and classic Rolls Royces. This is almost too modern, but they said they would have a look for me, as they are literally 10-minute drive from my house. However, they were really open and honest and incredibly helpful. If you do have an older Rolls Royce and you are in Sussex, West Hoathly Garage, superb service. I cannot fault them at all. But I couldn't get a lot done there just because of the age of this car. It was too modern for what they know. What I had done with them was I asked them to investigate some fault codes. There was a misfire on the engine which I didn't know was a misfire. It just didn't sound quite right. And a V12 apparently hides a misfire very well. So they checked the faults on that, they checked for the misfire, they diagnosed the problems and fitted 12 new spark plugs, 2 new tyres to the front, and that was it. However, that cost me £101 for 12 spark plugs, £840 for 2 new tyres, and £640 in labour. You then have the sales tax VAT to add to that of £316.23, bringing the total cost of its first visit to the garage just weeks after buying it of £1,897. They then recommended an alternative garage to take it to that did specialise in the more modern Rolls Royce. They actually did a lot more Bentley, Continental, GTs, things like that, than they did Rolls Royces, but I think that's just due to the numbers that have been produced. And they were again very helpful. And I have their bill here, which extends over 3 pages. So they carried out an annual service and oil flush. They checked their brake performance and changed the fluid. They changed the wiper blades and replaced the rubber on them. And the wiper input was not detected, so a replacement wiper stalk was fitted. Investigated the ongoing engine management fault with the misfire that the spark plugs hadn't corrected in the first one. The car also was getting stuck in neutral when you tried to put it into park. So you'd press the end of the stalk for the gears to go into reverse or drive, and in the centre is neutral, and you pop the end of it in to get into park. And the park light wouldn't always stay on. It would sometimes revert to neutral. And I wasn't sure what this was and why this was. And apparently this is a little switch underneath the brake pedal that also puts on the rear brake lights. If that gets stuck, it won't put it into park. So the stoplight switch was replaced. The radio also wasn't working when I got it as well. So they carried out the necessary checks on that, and they ended up sending it to an audio specialist for testing, which sadly came back inconclusive. The front lower arms on the front suspension, because there was a creak when you went over a bump. The Spirit of Ecstasy also was not working, and the mechanism had seized, and this needed replacing. And then there was a few bits and pieces around the vehicle where there were loose bits of trim, so they did that. There was also a piece of wheel trim missing, and those little fine spokes. They replaced those too. If we go through the costs, we have the annual service, the brake inspection, the wipers, the wiper stalk not working, the investigation of the fault codes for the engine management, the replacement of the 12 injectors. That all came to £2,525. The car getting stuck in neutral and the light and the stop light switch needing replacing, the radio investigation, and the lower arms on the front suspension, that came to £1,210. The seized Spirit of Ecstasy, so the young lady at the front can pop up and pop down, was £2,551. And then we have the little trim bits and pieces, which came to £141. Then there was the consumable bits and pieces that they have, the hazard waste disposal. There's one other thing in the extras. One of the reasons that the sound system wasn't working was one of the amps in the boot had failed. And the only place you can get an amp for a Rolls Royce to make the system original is of course Rolls Royce, and a Rolls Royce amp costs £3,370. So the total bill from them, £11,448, plus the sales tax, £13,737 in total. So that was place number 2. However, I got it back and I still wasn't quite happy with it. It just didn't run right. It wasn't as I would expect. So I contacted Rolls Royce of Essex, P&A Wood, and I asked them to come and collect the car, which they did very kindly. And I have a third bill from them, trying just to sort out the car to get it roadworthy and get it usable for my daily use if I wanted. An inspection of an oil leak under the bonnet, renewed the oil filler cap, renewed leaking alternator housing, renewed leaking cam cover and the oil seal, renewed leaking coolant and refilled with antifreeze. They then looked at a transmission fault where the car actually does just jerk slightly from second to first. So you come to a junction and it should, I think, actually stay in second gear, because unless you're in low mode, which is the equivalent to sport, I think this car takes off in second gear naturally. However, that doesn't quite happen. It stops and then dunk into first, and that dunk into first isn't very Rolls Royce like. So they looked at that. They recommended transmission repair or replacement, which I haven't done. Renewed a rear door switch, investigated concerns over the alarm sounding, which actually turned out to be that rear door switch. They recharged and sorted out a leak on the air conditioning side. They did a pre-MOT check. They sorted out the windscreen washers, of which the windscreen washer jets actually are blocked and have blocked again. They re-secured some bumper trim and they arranged an MOT, which it then sailed through. One thing I have learnt is the hourly rate for an aftermarket garage for a Rolls Royce is actually the same rate applied at a main dealer, and that is all because they apply a Paragon program discount. And Rolls Royce have this program where if a car gets older and is not considered to be one of their newer ones, they apply an hourly rate discount, so it reduces it to be the same as taking it to your local Rolls Royce specialist, if there is one. So after the discount's been applied, my labour bill at Rolls Royce was £4,585. Huge list, I'll just cover that information up at the top, of bits and pieces that they had. Comes to a total of £4,493, which means in total I have a bill of £9,199 for my first year of ownership. But of course that needs adding to £1,897 and £13,737, and that gives me a grand total of £24,893. So just shy of 25 grand in the first year of ownership. Now, only paid 45 for the car, and actually if you add the 25 and the 45 together, you're up to £70,000, which I think I could have got a better quality Rolls Royce for the money. So a cheap Rolls Royce isn't always the way forward. And one of the things I am really glad about is that it is chassis number 4. It's a really early car. So to me that means something. But if you're not worried about the chassis number, why spend 45,000 when it's going to cost you potentially 70,000? Now I think I was a little unlucky in buying a car that needed so much work, because the ownership actually on this car is quite low. It had P&A Wood, which was the main dealer. It then actually went to a funeral company for most of the rest of its life, and then was sold to the trader that I bought it from. So it's only 3 people before me, but it still doesn't mean that anyone has looked after it that well. And I think it was the last guy that let the bits and pieces slip on it. The funeral company have their own servicing department, as they have a fleet of Rolls Royces. So actually the Rolls Royce servicing had been kept up, but if you let these things slide, they deteriorate quickly. And I think that a hard life of actual use where it's done 100,000 miles has meant that it's needed to be maintained a little bit more around that 100,000 mile milestone. And that bill came to me. So just be wary if you're shopping for an older Rolls Royce and wonder if you can afford one. It might be better to buy from main dealer, because at main dealer you actually get, in the UK, I don't know about other countries, but in the UK you get 2 years servicing and 2 years warranty on the vehicle from the main dealer. So I'd have peace of mind. If it had cost me £100,000, you know, $120,000 from a main dealer, I would have the peace of mind that I wouldn't have another service bill for that period of time. And even if I couldn't afford the difference, if I'd financed the difference, potentially those finance payments may have only added up to what sits in my hand in pieces of paper. So consider that when you're looking or think about buying a Rolls Royce. Now I'm going to continue to make videos about this car, and if you'd like to find out more about what I'm going to do with it, and there is one big issue with this car that I haven't mentioned yet, and I will address it in another video, and it's not a cheap fix. I have had a ballpark quote from the Rolls Royce dealer to fix it, and it is a small fortune. I can live without it being done, but it would be a very nice thing to do. So like and subscribe, hit that bell notification button for the next video that comes out, and I hope to share with you more than just what it costs to own, but what are we going to do next with it, because I think there's plenty we can do with this car that would get it back to A1 condition. And just sitting in the back of it, I mean, look at this. It doesn't just stop, the seat doesn't just stop, it goes all the way round. Oh, it's superb. So I think we've covered just about everything with the running cost of this car in the first year. It's been a fair amount. If you add it all up, maybe I should have bought a more expensive car, maybe I should have bought one from a main dealer. But cars are about emotion, aren't they? And there's something that is emotive about this car. I like having chassis number 4 from Goodwood. Goodwood is just down the road from where I live. I'm able to go to the factory. I'm a member of the Goodwood estate, so it's nice to know that all these things are in the ecosystem of Goodwood. Would I do it again? 100%. Should I have bought a new one? Probably. And compared with the Rolls Royce Wraith that I owned for a period of time, which was a lot newer, 2017, and cost me a really small amount of money to run in that time. If you compare the two, I could have had a lot newer car for the money. But it's not about that, is it? I drive a Range Rover L322 that's, what, 12 years old now. That I don't drive because it's a status symbol or that I need to go off-road. In fact, it doesn't, you know, it's a bit ageless now, but it's not really a status symbol. It's not a brand new £200,000 Range Rover. But there is something special about all the big knobs and dials that can be changed with a glove on, because that's how they were designed. And there's something a little bit agricultural, and it just flicks something inside that means you can't get rid of it. You have to keep driving it. And that's the same with this car. And if you're a bit of a petrol head, you like cars, you'll know what I mean. So please like and subscribe below this video. I've put a link below as well to the previous video to this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.